I've been talking on mute this whole time. Okay. All right. So welcome everyone. That is not a problem with you. That's a problem with me. I had things muted. So this week we're going to talk about Monero. Let me recap everything I said. So normally I've been talking about Monero for a very long time, and it has dropped a lot based on some news. Even though if you look at the chart, it was dropping before that. But some of my viewers have expressed concern about this legitimately because they don't know what to do because it was finally delisted from Kraken. It was the last exchange in Europe that was able to transact it. So it behooves me to talk about that as well as provide a solution to that problem. So we're going to talk about that. Also, do a recap on some price action. Some interesting things happened on gold this week. 2 weeks ago, a viewer asked me about gold, and I think I called the high based on a very simple technical analysis tool that I use. But again, 140 is what I've been saying for Monero for a very long time, and you can see if you go back, that's a really good even price level. This meme right here is one I saw regarding the privacy aspect of Bitcoin. So we're going to leave this up. I'm going to play the music to let people filter in, and we will talk about it and learn something together. Hang on. All right. What's up, guys? How is it going? As always, if you guys got symbols to look at in the latter half of the live stream, post them in the chat on YouTube or on Discord. It's good to be back. Good to see my familiar faces. Glad you guys didn't. I hope you guys didn't miss me too much last week. Got busy with some other stuff I'm handling. But we definitely need to catch up this week. Big thing happened. As you guys know, I have been a big proponent of Monero for a long time. So it behooves me, because I had some supporters well, followers rather. Hold on, let me make the post on. I forgot to put it on Twitter. Tried doing Twitter live streams, and I don't get very much traction on there. Would love it if it did, but we'll stick with YouTube. Let me get my chat up so I can see what you guys have to say, and we'll get started. So yeah, I'll go ahead off the rip and talk about why I like Monero, and it's because of the reason that the price went down. Now, if you look at the daily chart here, and if you're a savvy technical trader, you can see that even though that news event was on October the 1st, let's pull up the news article here. So the quote-unquote reason, and I use quote-unquote because I'm always very skeptical of the news moving markets, because usually the news comes in and reports about the market after the move has happened. And so it's not like you can trade on the news. Yeah, down 7%, but you can see that basically what happened, even though the reason that it was down 7% on that particular day was this happening with Kraken. It's the same thing that happened a couple months ago, earlier in the year, when Binance delisted. It was a much bigger reaction back then. And I think one of the reasons it wasn't worse is because people just figured that it was just another event. I mean, that was back here. This is a big drop right here. It was down like 30, 40%. In February, whereas this was only 7%. You can see that it was already on a decline technically. But really, what is this decline in the grand scheme of things? Well, for the last 2 years, Monero has been almost like a stable coin. Well, stable coin with a very wide volatility between 180 and 100. But one of the reasons that it has outperformed Bitcoin this year, and that can be seen by looking at XMR BTC, the cross pair, from April of this year, basically since the all-time high, Monero has been and is still outperforming. Now, it's dipped a lot because Bitcoin had a little bit of resurgence, but again, today, it's starting to kind of catch up a little bit. I don't actually trade Monero. I see it as a store of value, and it's unfortunate that what's happening is happening to it, but the reason it's being delisted is because it's working as intended. It's working as a privacy coin. And one of the things I've tried to relate to people from my experience, I got into crypto quite a while ago. I'm a bit of an OG there. And I don't mean like I'm a 2018 crypto OG. I'm a 2011 crypto OG. And so I saw crypto from its initial starting point, Bitcoin, because there was no crypto in 2011. There was just Bitcoin. And that was a world where, believe it or not, you could initially buy Bitcoin on eBay. You could do PayPal, and that kind of went away around the time that I started. The way that I bought Bitcoin back in the early days was through another kind of. It wasn't PayPal. It wasn't PayPal wasn't the only game in town, but now it's kind of the only one. I don't even know if the service is around anymore, so I'm not even going to mention it. But they stopped doing it, and I was very angry that they stopped letting people do it because they were worried about the regulatory environment back in 2011. And so it's almost sort of a rhyming of history that Monero is starting to face a lot of the same problems that Bitcoin did in its early days, in that due to fear of regulation or actual regulation, mainstream methods of on-ramping are shutting down for it. But whenever that happened, whenever PayPal stopped letting you buy Bitcoin, whenever all these whenever the other payment methods stopped letting you buy Bitcoin with it, it obviously didn't kill Bitcoin. Obviously. And there was still a market for it. And so was it 2 days ago? Yeah, Wednesday. I was sitting there, of course, when it hit 140, put my money where my mouth is, and that is the level. And it went down to 136. But we have a pretty good recovery now, almost to the point where it's like, whoops, I should have gotten more. But again, I don't trade Monero the same as I would trade anything else. Number one, because there's no actual trends. Number two, because emotionally, I do have an investment in it. because I believe in it. I believe in the privacy aspect of having that in a cryptocurrency. You don't have that with Bitcoin. And that's no accident why Bitcoin is becoming mainstream adopted, because it can and is tracked. There's a whole industry dedicated to tracking Bitcoin. And so you can't do that with Monero. In fact, as long as it is being delisted for being too private, that's sort of a evidence that it is working as intended. I remember when it dropped back in February, I was initially, when I saw that big drop, I was like, oh no, they hacked Monero. They figured out how to get past the privacy. But then I found out it was just being delisted for being too private. So yeah, it's working as intended. But the question remains, because I want to be be of service to you guys, and that's why I do this live stream. By the way, if you have anything to look at, symbols to look at, we're going to get to the price action analysis after I talk about Monero, but put them in the chat, and we'll look at them, and I'll give you my opinion. So I want to, I might segment this out, but I told the people I wanted to know that had asked me about it to watch the live stream, I would be talking about it. I'm going to go through a method of what to do, or give you an alternative. I'm not going to tell you what to do, because the problem is, at the end of the month, Kraken is going to stop trading in Monero. You can't buy Monero, you can't sell Monero anymore. And then at the end of the year, December 31st, I guess, they're going to completely delist it, and you need to have withdrawn your Monero from the exchange then. And so that brings up the question of, what do you do if you're a European? Now, normally, I always say this, I don't talk about politics unless it directly affects markets, and this is a case. With the arrest of the founder of Telegram in France, and then a move like this, it's becoming pretty clear that the European powers that be, whoever they are, don't want citizens to have privacy in their communications or their money. That is a horrible, terrible thing, but not something that it seems like we can change. And I live in America, so I don't know that much about European politics. We've got our own political stuff going on here. But I don't think that there's anything you can really vote to change this. So you just kind of have to work around it. And so it's a legitimate concern that, you know, you have wealth, let's call it a percentage of your wealth, stored away anonymously so that other people can't see it. They can't see you move it. They can't see how much you have. That's Monero. But if you can't change that back to fiat, you can't trade it, which again, I don't trade. I just kind of, I hodl, essentially. I look at Monero like Bitcoin maxis look at Bitcoin. But if you needed it, what would you do? If you can't go to an exchange and get euros, then what are you to do? Well, let's talk about that. So I did a little bit of research, and I found that there are several solutions. One thing that someone just brought up in the chat here is that KuCoin still has, KuCoin, still has a Monero listing in the EU. I don't know about that. I don't know what the KYC requirements are for that. So I can't vouch for that. But what I did do research on before the live stream is DEX, DEX, Decentralized Exchange. And so there are lots of them out there. There are atomic swaps. There are web-based decentralized exchanges where you do everything through a browser. You get a browser wallet, and you set that up, and you can do swaps that way. There are actually lots of ways that you can exchange Monero or any cryptocurrency for another one. It just depends on liquidity. And fortunately, Monero is one of the most liquid, if not sometimes the most liquid currency on these distributed, decentralized exchanges. And the one I looked at actually that I did some testing on, and forgive me, I'm going to bring up a little thing here just in case I need to use it for, oh, I already had it on there, for OPSEC. But this is Bisq. Bisq, like, I don't know, crab bisque or turtle bisque. That was a World of Warcraft reference. So this is a standalone application that you download. And I did my research before I download anything to my computer. This is one of the most recommended ways to swap. One of their largest, most liquid pairs is Monero, and this is a unfortunately Bitcoin-based uh, exchange. And why it's Bitcoin-based is because it uses Bitcoin for fees. It also does, it has to write to the Bitcoin blockchain, so you have to pay that mining fee. And you're going to pay fees regardless of what you do. There are ways to mitigate it, but this way, being Bitcoin-based, is probably going to have some high fees. But I tried it, and it worked very well. I had to go through a couple of steps that I'll just go through real quick here with you guys. But basically, you just need to get this and install it, and then go through some of the setups. And essentially, you have an order book of people that are offering and taking, or excuse me, making and taking orders for XMR and Bitcoin. And you can do a lot of different currencies here, but of course, for this purpose, we are looking at Bitcoins. But you can do these by euro, which is interesting. It actually has a lot more than dollars, probably because people are starting to use this. The spreads, like any somewhat illiquid exchange, are going to be big, but this is how you can do it. You can exchange Monero for Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency, or you can do it with fiat, euro. But again, then you lose all features. I'm not really sure how to add a fiat-based currency to this. It's probably something like USDC or Tether, what we're talking about here in this case. But yeah, so this would be the one that I tested out. And what you can do is, this is really, it's cool because it gets me back into the original ways that I used to trade crypto. It's been a long time since you needed to go in here and create offers and things like that. But once you set things up, the unfortunate thing is you do have to start with some Bitcoin. And you're probably going to have to start with like about 100 euro or 200 euro of Bitcoin just to kind of start, because what you have to do is you have to pay a security fee. That's in case there's any disputes in your transaction, like if someone doesn't, send theirs. Essentially what this does is allows people to come together and create a swap, all right? And so let's just say that we wanted to sell a little bit. I'll just go through a transaction here. And we're going to let's find a real small one. Find a real small XMR. Okay, so this one, XMR, this person wants 0.2 XMR, so that's good. So I'm going to sell them 0.2 XMR, and then it's going to go through all this. And so let's see, next step. I have this much Bitcoin in here right now. That is really just for the fees and security deposits. And so I'm leaving all these warning messages up right here. And so what we need to do is we need to transfer funds from our wallet. That's where we pay our fees from. Like I said, you had to deposit a little bit of Bitcoin into your Bisq wallet to do the fees. You get a lot of it back. It's sufficiently funded. And I'm going to review it and then confirm. And I'm also going to pay a little more in fees because I'm a taker. If you were to be patient and set up your own order in the order book, you're going to avoid that fee. And so what I'm going to do is it's going to go through, and I'll talk about some other stuff while we're waiting on this stuff to confirm. It's pretty quick, but not instantaneous. But then again, no transfer is. So we're going to let that happen, and we're going to start talking about some price action to kind of get things rolling. But that's what I wanted to kind of show you guys today as we're going through. And so, yeah, starting off with Monero price action, like I've said for pretty much every live stream for most of this year, 140, actually it goes back before that, 140 was always kind of the fair value, the middle of this consolidation range. And every time it hits 140, you've been pretty darn secure in buying it and allocating to it. I had actually been sitting here talking about Monero as it's been worth more and more relative to Bitcoin all the way up here, and I just temperamentally, can't bring myself to buy something when it's at the high, and it came back to 140, so I'm good with that. Let's look at Bitcoin, because we're also talking about that. So Bitcoin, I gotta say, the volume profile levels, I thought it was very interesting in the last couple of weeks. This is the daily, by the way. So the volume profile level of this whole consolidation level range from the all-time high to now was sitting at about 63K. And it was very, very interesting when it came through here starting on September the 21st and hit it as support and then started to rise. But it never quite got up to a level where I would consider shorting it again, which was really basically the next volume profile node here at 66,900. It's really just kind of not tradable at this moment, and that's okay. That is okay. You gotta look at something. If it's not fitting rules, you can't force a trade. And so I'm sitting on my BITI, which is the short ETF. I've been holding on to it for quite a while, since all the way back in April. And it's really just a battle. I felt very confident when we came up on this day, Thursday and Friday of last week, because I was getting pings on my Bitcoin Maxi chat of, ha ha, parabolic soon. And yeah, when people start pinging me about how excited they are for the price of Bitcoin because they know that I've been talking openly about being short, that gives me confidence that I'm going to be okay. Because they're just basically, the price is reflecting their emotions and their emotions is reflecting the price. And here we are, several percentage points lower than when they were gloating about how parabolic soon. So no one's winning. It's still just stuck. But if you're just looking at things objectively, it's still, I mean, you had a chance. It had a chance these last couple weeks to maybe do what it needs to do, which is make a higher high, and it so far didn't. And it's going to be pretty bad if you have a lower low. But as it stands, it's basically, I don't know if it's a classic signal because I don't really trade based on patterns, but it's an expanding, decreasing wedge, whatever that, lower highs, lower lows. It just is what it is. And that's not what you need to get this thing up to 100. Now, it depends on who you ask. They're going to say that this thing's going to break out. It's going to go crazy, whatnot. It's into that. We're still waiting on the confirmation on our trade here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have to deposit the Monero to BISC, and then that's going to be sent, and that's the next step for me. So, yeah, we'll see that in just a second here. Yeah, I wanted to keep that up there before I go back. I just don't want the transaction ID on stream. That's all. So, okay. So let's see. KuCoin. Let's take a look at this for Van right here. So basically, I can't trade on this from the United States because they know I'm coming from the United States. They're actually closed. Oh, interesting. This is the first thing that came up for me. I've known KuCoin. Actually, I've been reached out to by KuCoin to do like referrals and affiliates, and I've always said no to those things because frankly I don't need the money, and I don't from them. Everybody likes money, but I don't support any exchanges. The only reason I'm supporting BISC is because it comes highly recommended, and they didn't ask me to. I question it when people need to ask me to do that. But anyway, according to this, which I'm just learning by reading it, you can't trade. I can't trade as an American on here, but probably Europeans can. However, I've got a sneaking suspicion that they may be in the same boat as Kraken. I don't know. But I'm actually kind of curious if I don't have an account on here, never have, but they're just telling me this because I'm American, and I can't really test this unless I have an account. So we're gonna kind of leave that as an unknown if we can trade on here or not. So could be an option, might not be, but I think probably if you still want to have your, okay, we're ready to do the next step. So I need to do this. I need to transfer this over. So we're going to send that much to this Monero address. Okay, and then we need to get to confirm that we did it. It's not confirmed in the chain yet, but we're going to just not do this. OPSEC, pardon me. Okay. So we're going to see about that, and we'll come back to that when we can. Okay, good. All right. So yeah, getting our learn on. Okay. So let's talk about some other markets. So there has been another question that has been nagging me, and that is, what is the stock market doing? Let me dig into that a little bit more. So this is the S&P 500 futures. And back in the good old days of 2020, 2021, one could just look at the ES futures and have a no questions asked answer to what price is doing if you were using a price action analysis of it, okay? The problem is that since interest rates are not zero, you have a time factor built into trading futures. In other words, when you trade futures, you inherently have to trade on margin, okay? Margin is basically a credit that your broker gives you of a bunch of money, more than you may actually have, to exercise the full amount of what a futures contract represents. So when you trade a futures contract, it moves up $100 or $200 depending on the things. It's a manageable amount, but you're actually trading thousands of dollars worth of that index. You just don't see that unless you kind of drill down and understand what's going on. And so you may not have thousands of dollars. You may have only account size that's very small, but you can still trade futures because they're giving you margin. And so by virtue of that, holding a futures contract open, because it has not settled yet, it settles at a later date, means that you're essentially taking out a loan from your broker. And like anyone that you take a loan from, they expect to have some kind of usury fee, some kind of an interest rate. And since the interest rate is not zero, based on, because futures are time-based, there's going to be a difference in what you buy it for and what you sell it for. There's going to be an arbitrage in there, which is being eaten up by bots and such. And so the contracts are going to be different from month to month. And so right now I have as default set up for TradingView to automatically adjust for contract changes. And you can see there's a very big difference in what the all-time high is from July, because that was several months ago, to what it is if I don't adjust for contract changes. And so that's been kind of messing up the analysis of what is the market doing right now. So according to adjusted futures, essentially the price action has been such that is rather kind of bearish. In fact, you had a false breakout on September the 19th, which gave me a little bearish spidey sense. You finally got above it, but not really that conclusively. And then we came around and we did a Tinkinson cross and retest. If you look on the weekly, still not, it is kind of getting above it, but not quite. Now, if we don't adjust for contract changes, we come up to this. And this, the all-time high changes to be down around here. And that's almost a break and retest. If we go to SPY or SPX, if we go to the indices ETFs themselves, we have a bullish signal. And now we're just kind of waiting. And so we'll see. It's possible that since the preponderance is, since we have the adjusted contract or the unadjusted contracts and the ETF showing us a bullish sign, that this was a break and a retest. So I'm going to sit here neutral right now. I do have puts on SPY, not that many, but just enough to kind of get us through the election. Some November puts on SPY just to see if we get a move down to hedge a little bit. Because like most people, hopefully, you have a lot of stocks that are just going up. And that's good. But, if this market keeps going up, I'm going to be in good shape either way. So, yeah, we shall see. Let's see. Did our thing confirm? Not quite yet. We're waiting until it confirms. Okay. All right. So, what are some other things too that we need to look at? Oh, gold. So, someone asked me, and I love you guys asking questions about things because I don't necessarily look at everything myself every single day. But gold is, I am remiss that I don't really follow gold that much. I'm not a big gold bug. But there was an interesting question. I appreciate you guys bringing this to me. By the way, get your symbols in to look at. We're coming up on the last segment of last half. I'm not done of the live stream here, but I want to answer your questions about symbols, and so get them in the chat. We got a couple to look at here. Let me catch up on chat. KuCoin is KYC. They asked me for license and selfie last time I used them. Yeah, because they're obviously blocking Americans. What does the volume profile look like on Monero? Good question. It's just as useless as anything else. It's way down here in the bottoms as it is. Again, I wish I could trade it, but it's not trending. And my style of trading is trending. Is a trend trader. I don't use RSI. I don't speak against it. It's just that I don't trade highs and lows. But I at least know not to buy when it was sitting around 170s. I at least know not to do that. That's against my temperament. Bitcoin looks like Nvidia right now. Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is basically a tech stock. And tech stocks are just, I mean, Nvidia looks like the NASDAQ because it makes up such a big point of it. And then if we convert it, it's a little more like basically Bitcoin topped out in March, whereas NASDAQ topped out in July and Nvidia topped out in June. And so everything basically has tech is basically topped out. And a lot of people presume that, you know, this announcement that interest rates were dropped by 0.5% was going to be this massive liquidity infusion into tech and Bitcoin, but it's not that much of a difference. It was kind of just a little bit of hopium. Yeah. KuCoin is Chinese. I really don't like Chinese things. I like Chinese products that I buy, I guess, because everything is made in China. But you know, a lot of people have been. I've had several friends tell me they're going to start getting into Chinese stocks recently. What is the symbol for the Chinese index? I have been deliberately obtuse about keeping track of the Chinese market because I had so many friends get screwed on BABA several years ago. Oh, look, it's going up. No wonder people are wanting to get into it. No, don't. Just don't. Look, I had several friends try to buy the dip back in 2021 of BABA and back around 200 and some change. And they have gotten killed if they're still in it. Most of them did put option calls, but Chinese stock index. So it's the SC. What is this? Where are we? Let's just do this. Chinese index. Hang Seng 50 index. Let's try that. Yeah, I mean, of course, people are getting interested because it's having a yeet, but it's really having a yeet up to resistance. Honestly, what happened with Baba was Jack Ma, the CEO of Alibaba, said a few things, not really against the government. I don't know exactly what he said, but it was enough to get him disappeared for a few weeks. And he since returned to public view, and every time he's been sitting public, he is flanked by very official-looking men, agents of the Chinese government, handlers, guards. He's essentially under house arrest in China because the Chinese government doesn't mess around, and they don't actually like capitalism. And I've been trading for over a decade now, and there's been at least 2 instances where the Chinese stock market had this. Oh, this doesn't go back far. Well, it kind of goes back far enough. There's been 2 instances in 2015 and in 2018 where a lot of Chinese citizens got really, really into stocks. And they started taking out stocks on leverage. They started, investing in stocks, trying to diversify. And essentially, the Chinese government, I need to go back on the details. Actually, let me not speak that the Chinese government did it. It had massive crashes. And actually hasn't recovered since 2018. And a lot of Chinese investors, they put their money into it, hoping to, have some kind of a nest egg, so to speak. They don't have 401ks over there. It's a socialist communist country, okay? Um, they've basically been given no option. And so I am just categorically, I just refuse to invest in any Chinese stocks because there's plenty of others. There's plenty of other U.S.-based stocks, European stocks to invest in. There's no interest. I have no interest in any opportunities in Chinese stocks because you have that extra X factor to work against you. You have that extra risk factor of the Chinese government coming in and putting their finger or their fist on the scale and ruining a good trade or investment. So I just say no. And so I'm not particularly interested. I'm not going to trade any Chinese stock. So, but going back to it being KuCoin being a Chinese exchange, well, that makes me like it even less. In fact, I'm wondering how they actually operate, since I thought China banned Bitcoin and stuff like that. Who knows? Yeah. So Van thinks that the EU is pushing all exchanges out and making their own e-exchange. Yeah, I mean, because they want to be able to track people's money to fight terrorism. It's a weird world we live in. I mean, I think if you ask people on the street, if you ask anybody that votes, do you want privacy? They would all say yes. In fact, I bet if you ask them, do you want privacy, even if it means some, terrorists can get funding, they might still say yes. But we don't actually get to choose these things. And so you have to take steps for yourself. And so, yeah, I'm still waiting for that. All right. Okay, it's still confirming on the Monero chain. All right. So, yeah. All right. Gold. I started talking about gold, then I wanted to catch up on chat. Actually, one more thing. Cactus says, "Hey Norok, Chinese stock market is going up due to government stimulus package. Great, but what happens when that runs out?" That's what I'm saying. I mean, they manipulate their own stock market very heavily. Okay, that is just a factor that I don't want to deal with. I don't want to worry about. You can lose plenty of money on the stock itself doing something stupid. Having a great trade be ruined by the Chinese government, I would just feel like an idiot if I had put myself in that situation. I don't particularly like communism. Why would I put any money into it? Anyway, I digress. All right, so gold. So 2 weeks ago when I did a live stream, very good question. We were talking about gold, and I have this still annotated from last week, and it's very, very cool to look at. So I don't look at Fibonacci extensions. Oh, I did the adjustment. Hold on, let's check. There we go. I don't look at Fibonacci extensions. That is one way that people classically have used Fibonacci extensions to find potential targets. Like if you're in a instrument and you don't know where your target needs to be because it doesn't have another all-time high. In other words, it's pushing new all-time highs, which gold is. People will use Fibonacci extensions. They go to their indicator and they'll choose some of these extensions, like the popular ones are 1.618. I need to do this backwards. Hang on. The 2 point some change. And I've been aware of this for a very long time, since I started trading. Because everyone that goes through trading, you go through the reading of the books and all the stuff that you see online. And you kind of try to implement this kind of stuff. But basically, if you did the Fibonacci extension, it would give you these numbers as potential numbers for where your target needs to be if you're letting something run, okay? So just going back here, that white line is when we had our live stream back on Friday the 20th. And so let's go back to this point. What I said there was I use a sort of reverse engineered method around my 50% retracements. One of the key technical indicators I use is just 50% retracements, and that's not actually technically a Fibonacci number, by the way, but that people assume that it is. But that we'll just go with it. So 50% is just something that price tends to respect a hell of a lot. Okay, a lot of great trades work off of 50%. In fact, I think what was that one that Manaconda talked about today? It wasn't SMCI. It was let's see, where is that? It's just a very, very recent example. I mean, I've talked about it on my live streams for many, 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 many times. Well, I'll just bring up Coca-Cola, which, yum. That is a great example of a 50% retracement that happened in the last year that I was able to actually benefit from. A lot of people that I talked to were. So that basically came back to a 50% level in October of 2023. One second, let me clean things up. Very simple. So 50% levels, boom to boom, low to high, COVID low to the high, then boom, perfect. 5174, 50% retracement. MetLife is a little bit more recent one. That was at 50.09, basically from the COVID low to the high, 50%. Kroger, wasn't that also a 50%? Yep. So from the July to here, boom, 50% there. So 50, 50, 50, 50, 50 has always been a very good level. And what's kind of interesting about it, if you think about it, okay, is if you know that 50% is going to be a very common pullback level, let's just say that we're here, right? So let's just kind of say like, okay, well, oftentimes it's very clear to see a past high or low, or high in this case, where price respected. In case this would have been the December 2015 high of Kroger. And so if we kind of reverse engineer or work forward, so forward engineer a 50%, and we say, okay, well, my 50% to match up with that level is going to be about here. And so I'm going to set my target, I'm going to set a high to create that 50% at this level right here. And so that ends up being a very effective tool as much and as often as 50%'s work. Now that didn't quite get up to that level right there, and that's where you got to kind of play off base a little bit, but that gives you an idea where this thing might turn around and reverse, because that lets it come back and create a 50%, which it can then hold. And so now we get to gold. And so what I talked about 2 weeks ago was, okay, well, if I was going to, people asked me, am I buying gold now? I was like, nah, I'll wait for a pullback. And so that brings up two questions. Number one, where might a pullback happen? And when might it start to happen? And so based on some clear prior levels at 2,500 or 26, I'm using futures, by the way. We can use other things too. I drew out a 50% level at that level, and then what that did was that told me that, okay, well, that means that 2,700 is going to be a very likely inflection point. May not be the ultimate all-time high, but that could be the all-time high that it starts to pull back to that 25, 26 level. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, we go and it hit and topped out and held that level on September the 26th, just a few days after. I'm not a oracle. Remember, technical analysis is just astrology for men, but damned if that doesn't seem to be working, actually. And gold does seem to be entering into a pullback state. In fact, today you have a close below retest and hold of the Tinkinson, the TS, the 9-period 50%. That's my trigger line. So now this has ended the strong bullish trend of gold officially in my book. Not necessarily entered a bearish pullback yet. If we dug down, we added a little bit of Ichimoku flavor to this, we can see that if it starts to break this range, then yeah, it's going to start really breaking this trend. But we already kind of have a significant move here. So yeah, if it breaks down, if it breaks this recent low at 2650 on the futures, that could enter a bearish state, a bearish trend back down to that pullback level of 25.26 on gold. So cool stuff. Cool stuff. This is why I like these things happening. I like people bringing up these questions to me so we can all share them and look for opportunities. So I'd actually be seeing my transaction would already be done if I use Atom. Well, as I said, there's a lot of other ways. There's decentralized exchanges based on Ethereum. There's decentralized exchanges based on Solana. You're probably telling me that there's decentralized exchanges based on Atom. Probably so. There's a lot, okay? And what your criteria needs to be for selecting what method you use is going to be liquidity, even more than the fee. If the fee is less, then that doesn't matter if you can't make a transaction. I chose BIS because it was highly recommended. It is primarily Bitcoin based, and so it is I would say, a market leader in decentralized exchanges. It was pretty easy to use too. Can I get that Monero thing off of there? I'm not trying to make this a whole ad for Monero. Okay, we're done. We're done. So we did it. We made our trade, and I sold some Monero for Bitcoin. Later, I will trade that back, or I'll keep it. Who knows? We'll see. But that was how to do it. Took us less than an hour, probably less if I'd been paying attention to it. So about 30 minutes to trade it from start to finish on BISC once it's all set up. And so that is an option for you Euros out there that should be available into the future. Because, look, you're not the only person with that problem or that concern. And the fees that you pay for making this swap are given to people that operate these decentralized exchanges. It was one of the really cool things about DeFi, distributed finance, when it hit the scene a few years ago, or became all the rage a few years ago, was people could earn yield providing these kind of swaps to people without having to actually lose their coins. It's just that there are a lot of different options out there, and not everyone gets to be the winner. So, hey, Zishan, what's up? All right, let's look at those things. Edge Wallet can swap XMR as well. Thanks, Rich. Just natively. Okay, so there's a lot of ways out there for you guys to exchange it if you need to. And so, yeah, just be safe about it. You know, I'd be curious. Everything's going to carry risk. You know, I was about to say be careful installing stuff on your computer, but hey, I mean, you're going to have to do something. You're going to maybe set up a virtual machine that is kind of isolated, and then only swap what you need to swap at the moment. But then we start digging into that area of, is this easy enough for your grandmother to do? Follow-up question. Are we ever really going to see mainstream adoption? Rhetorical. All right, let's start looking at symbols here as we're getting into the 50-minute mark. So get your symbols to look at here. Let's look for some opportunities, guys. All right. I'm a little biased now that not much is going to be very, very good, because the stock market right now is just kind of hanging out. Can't make a decision, but let's take a look at what we got. Meta, Facebook, or AKA, making new all-time. Is it new all-time high? Yeah, it's going up, Jen. Palantir. Yes, that's the darling of this year. It's going up. Cool stuff. Yeah, I mean, I need a pullback myself, and so I'm just going to state the obvious. This is going up. I don't buy things in the middle of a yeet, and these are yeeting. Disney. Now that might be interesting. Is it recovering? It does seem to be. And so the resistance here on Disney is going to be getting back up to 101. That's that level where it entered into the valley of risk, you know, from which you never know where it's going to bottom out. And it turns out that it did bottom out around 84. But you didn't know that. That was actually, we can call that the loose volume profile point of control at 88. Not very exact, but looks like it held it. That was the bottom of that range. Let's do a little update on our volume profile here. Make sure that's still the level to hold. Bring it up to current. Yeah, it's moved up a little bit, but that is basically going to be the support now. Nice pullback here. Intel, is that the other one? I do want to look at Intel. All right, so I'm kind of remiss that I've been very lazy about buying Intel, and honestly, that has served me well in my financial life, being lazy. Sometimes people ask me to invest in things, and I'm just kind of lazy about it because I don't like, I'm just kind of like, I'll get back to it. I'll look at it later. And that keeps me temperamentally from FOMOing, but it also has saved me from getting into some bad investments. A lot of private equity stuff that people have asked me to get into. and I'm just kind of like, not really interested, not really motivated. And then I come back later, and my friends that did get into it, how's it going, bud? It never helps when it hurts. Well, the guy we gave the money to, he kind of ran off with it. Whoops. Guess I was glad I was lazy. So well, let me bring back my annotations from last week. I mean, I basically laid out what I was looking for. I need to update this a little more now. So I'm always looking for some kind of a pullback. Let's update this a little bit. Still, I want to see a pullback to this level 2159. Oh, it looks like it did actually. Well, let's see if I can be rewarded for my laziness, and we can get Disney to come back to. I highlight my little arrow here I drew. Let's see if we can get it to come back to this level. Okay, 2159. Let's do a volume profile of what we have so far. It's still a little bit down here, but that's where we can put our stop is below 20. And yeah, I mean, I still want to buy Intel at a 21-year low. Yes, I've just been very patient about it because, again, it is. I'm doing something that is based on a 2-decade low. I don't really need to worry about that much. Yeah, so essentially what you had this week, on the weekly is you have a close above and a pullback to retest the 50% retracement. So we're actually getting into the situation where I do get more confident buying Intel. So maybe next week I'll get off my ass and buy some. We'll see. Let's see what else we got here. What about BitPay, Rich? What do you mean? PACCAR. What does PACCAR do, Jen? I got a couple of previous annotations up here. Looks like a 50%. Yeah, it's coming up to 103.22, which is basically, again, it is a stock that's coming out of the valley of risk. And let me just redraw this right here. So the trend that I'm looking at here would be the starting point November 2023 to here. That is, of course, where it broke and entered its own little valley risk here. And now, all right, 103.22. If you can break this level, you're good to go. So that could be an interesting credit. The private equity passed up on it. Glad for it. Well, they never actually asked me for investment because Tony and what's the main guy? They had the money they needed. So we sat down and we talked about it. I would have liked to have just, given them money and then done nothing. But they were both going to take active roles, and that meant I was more seeing if there was a job, but there wasn't really a job to work there. So they weren't really asking me for money. So that's not quite the situation there. And to be fair, I'm sure they've made money over the years on fees, but they've made a hell of a lot more just having Bitcoin, haven't they? So, I'm not. There's no regrets there. Hashtag no regrets. All right, Microsoft. Microsoft, it has already survived its 50% pullback at 388.63, and it's just doing the tech stock shuffle of the current year, where it's just kind of hanging out. But there's another example, prime example of 50% holding, 388.63, perfect, glorious, beautiful, multiple hits of it, and so Microsoft is good. That's definitely a hodl. All right, what else we got? Oh, IPAR. Sorry, Zishan. IPAR, Inter Parfums. Is that a 50% hold? We're going to go back to the bottom one here, June. And yeah, that's a beautiful 50% hold. Again, that's a hodl. Where your support needs to be 112.72-ish, maybe a little higher. But yeah, so good on that. Well, it did react to the 50%. You say, yeah, you're correct. We're a few days late on it, but yeah, that looks good. I would prefer something to hit it once and go. Like, I really like it when something does like Microsoft did. When it hits it, it did hit it and it went. Okay, so that prior one wouldn't have been at 50%. It's from the all-time high to here. That's a good hit and go. In fact, that's Is that, no, it's not quite post earnings, is it? No, it's not. It's post earnings, but yeah, oof. That's a really good bar right there to come off of 50%. I am remiss that I didn't see that one. All right, Hele, Helen of Troy. I think you talked about this last week. So I've got a level marked off here. I bet you that's a volume profile level. It is from this prior price action here, and that is where it has come up to and is holding. So the level to beat, the level to break out from is the volume profile level at 62.97. If you can get a break above that, then your target's going to be, let's call it the high here to there, and so 87.83. That's a good level too. So yeah, that's where you want it to get to. But yeah, looks pretty good. If it can break it needs to break it. It's fighting it now. It's hit it twice, actually 3 times in the last few months. And yeah, tells you that level's there. You can see it with your eyes. All right. Anything else in chat? What's up, Teague? Your new money tree. Oh, yeah. Well, enjoy the money tree. What are the various Monero variations? Monero Gold, Wrapped Monero. So yeah, I don't know about Monero Gold, but Wrapped Monero is I believe it is a Ethereum-based thing where basically you take, so a wrapped anything, I may be wrong about this. Again, DeFi, I've been a bit of a Luddite, a neo-Luddite. Luddites are basically, I think that there's like a religious group back in the way before time. They refused to adopt technology during the Industrial Revolution. They stayed, kind of like Mennonites or what is it? The people in Pennsylvania that have horses and carriages. Quakers. So Luddites are people that kind of refuse to adopt new technology. That's kind of like a word if you're being a Luddite. And so when the DeFi stuff was going out, I tried to learn it, but I kind of got overwhelmed. So I'm not an expert on DeFi. In fact, I learned Bisq just to, learn by teaching, which is a good way to learn, by the way, for you guys, for the questions of the Euro folks that need a solution or at least options for their problem. But Wrapped, I believe, is where you create a smart contract on Ethereum, and within that smart contract, because of course it can be encrypted, you put, I believe, a private key of a wallet, which only someone that has access to that smart contract can then use. And so you essentially, have a wallet, okay, of a certain amount of a cryptocurrency, whether it's Bitcoin, Monero, or anything else, and that's put into the smart contract. And so now that smart contract holds that amount, and so that becomes wrapped in Ethereum that much. And so you can't access it unless you have access to the smart contract. And of course, then you can delegate who has access to it, change who has access to it within the smart contract parameters. And so that kind of secures and locks up, wraps, if you will, that amount of another cryptocurrency. And then you can trade that with someone or give that smart contract to somebody else. I think that's probably a somewhat accurate description of what it is, but it's just another way of using one cryptocurrency blockchain to move another. And so I think a lot of people like to use wrapped Bitcoin and, of course, wrapped Monero. And, of course, for that, you would be just doing an Ethereum swap or doing it on the Ethereum chain. So there's lots of ways. I think the answer that I want to give to people is there's lots of ways, but you're, of course, going to have to sit down and learn something about it, which has been always the case with cryptocurrency. And since I don't see any questions, I'm gonna close on that. So I'm not going to tell you what to do if you are worried about, if you're in a Eurozone and you're worried about your Monero. Hopefully, I've given you a good option, or open your mind to the different options that are out there to do these kind of exchanges. You're not locked into holding it, and if you needed to exchange it to someone, you could. But I see it as a store of value, and so I'm not really particularly needing to exchange it out right now. But if you have any more questions, come talk to me privately on Discord or something else. and we'll talk about it. But yeah, it's a sucky situation that other people want to have their eyes on your money. Um, Zishan asks, should coming earnings report be a concern on HLE? Broad answer, no. I tend to be very agnostic about earnings because they can either help or hurt you, and you don't know ahead of time. If you did, you would be insider trading. If I have a short term trade, like let's say an option that is going to expire relatively soon, then if earnings is coming out, I'm going to not want to be in that option, because if it goes against me, pretty much any profit I have now and future are going to be wiped out. Plus, if you have, let's take a look at this. If you have an option, actually, I'm glad I looked at this. This is actually an example of what I was thinking. So let me bring up, this is a Thinkorswim, by the way, where I have a way of looking at implied volatility. You can look at implied volatility on any exchange, but I have an indicator here that I kind of coded from other people's that shows me color-coded if the implied volatility, that is the IV of the options, are higher or lower relatively. And so the average IV for the last year has been about 46, and the 30-day contracts are, or the average, the IV right now, measured by Thinkorswim, is 88. So the average, the IV right now is double the average. So there's a lot of speculation going into this earnings. And part of that is because the stock has been going down so much. You're going to naturally see IV increase because it's fear is what IV is. It's fear of losing it. So more people go out to buy insurance when they're fearful, inflating the price of options, therefore increasing implied volatility. And so if I had a call of any expiration less than 90 days, I would very likely close it here, because even if it goes up, what you're going to see on earnings is like every other earnings typically, back here, back in 1.8, as soon as earnings announces, that uncertainty goes away and your IV plummets. That brings down all your options prices, both calls and puts. Same thing happened, rise up to earnings and drop. And so you got a pretty damn good, not 100%, but like 90% chance that IV is going to go down. All option prices are going to go down after earnings is announced. And so even if you get a move up, you may still not even be able to sell your option for as much as you could have the day before. And so over the years of doing this, I always try to exit out of it. The other thing is, if I had a rather large position, like a trading position that I was maybe taking on a lower time frame, like a 30-minute trade, where I've taken some, like a margin trade on it, then I might be concerned as well. But if you just have a small stock trade, if you just have a small portfolio allocation, I wouldn't let it bother me very much. But I wouldn't be initiating new trades either, because earnings can help or hurt your trade. And I don't have a coin to flip for demonstrative purposes right now, but it is basically a coin flip. And so I'm generally agnostic as to what it might do, because you don't know. But as far as execution-wise, when it comes to having a trade open, I'm going to get out before earnings so that it can't mess up an otherwise good trade or turn a marginal trade into a bad one. I want to control for what I can control for. And you can't control for earnings, but you can control your exposure. And so that's generally what it is. Monero, okay, so this looks like it came from ChatGPT. Monero Gold, yeah. Monero Gold is a cryptocurrency that aims to be more private and secure alternative. Monero, wait a minute, it's a fork of the Monero blockchain. You're welcome, John. You know what? There's Bitcoin Gold, there's Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, there's all these forks. So what was an example? Bitcoin exists because of first mover advantage. It really does. The problem with Monero Gold is I don't understand what Monero Gold offers as a solution to exchanging. It just seems to be a fork of Monero. So I don't think that's really an option. But Wrapped could be, though. Oh, Bane. Let's take a look at Bane. Is that Bayer? Bayer AG? Oof. I guess aspirin isn't very profitable. They probably do more. Of course they do. So the volume profile for this past area, 5411. Oof. Oof. Could be a discount. This would be sort of like Intel, where you don't really have a solid support to go on. See, the last low was at 34, and it's below that. Oh, well, you see here that it came up, tested that last low, and it's down below it. Let's go to the weekly. If a gun was put to my head and I was asked to buy a trade, I would probably buy it with the expectation I'm bottom picking, because it has effectively crossed over that Tinkinson, but it's just kind of hanging out. I mean, and then the monthly, you actually do have your first close. Okay, so if I was forced to take a trade on this, I would look for it to pull back to $28, and then I would look. So yeah, because that now you finally got a Tinkinson cross. You got price action above. This is your first sign that the trend could be reversing, and I want to play it as a pullback because it's going to be higher risk because it's so far down. You're catching a falling knife. So I did talk about Intel, Toby, a little bit earlier. If you want to back up, I'll do a quick recap because I just like I was saying with that, Intel this week finally did cross over the Tinkinson, which is kind of like my trigger line. So you have your first sign that possibly this bearish trend is abating. I've been very patient, very, very almost overly patient buying Intel, but I want to own Intel. Actually, I don't have it. No, I don't have it in isolation. It's probably in ETFs I own, but I do want to buy Intel at a 21-year low, just for that reason. And I've been very patient about it, kind of missing out on it a little bit, letting it come back. So I'm probably going to look for this coming week for it to maybe give me a little bit of a sign around 2150. Didn't quite hit it yesterday, but I don't. It's not really making any big moves yet. So we're going to see. 2150 is my buy level now. I'm being patient. May miss it. It's fine. We'll see. We'll see. All right, guys. Well, thanks for your questions. I hope this gives you guys a little bit of a heads up on what you can do about your Monero if you live in the Eurozone. I missed the war symbols. Where? War symbols. War symbols? I bet they're going up. Hey. Boeing's not going up. Boeing's been kind of one of these things where I really should have gone with my gut. When that door flew off the plane, I thought to myself, I don't want to fly on Boeing Airlines, and everyone's going to think that too. And plus, their company has been having some really. The reason that Boeing was right for it was, in hindsight, I didn't short it because I didn't buy puts on it because I thought I was being too obviously contrarian. In fact, to short Boeing, which was back here in January, it was this drop right here. This is that weekend drop from Friday to Tuesday. You even had a nice little pullback here to play. But that was the door flying off. So, that's the door flying off signal. I thought I was being too mainstream, and that's why I didn't do it. I worked against myself here. But what is it? The 737 Max is what product they've been making that was going to bring them back to positive. And that's if that was their flagship product, they were expecting to bring the company back from losing money for years and years and years, for 2 or 3 years now. And it had a major malfunction that they're just lucky didn't kill anybody, then that's not good for the company. And so it was kind of obvious, but almost too obvious. But yeah, so Boeing is kind of a defense contractor. But yeah, if you own war stocks, which I do, I actually, the one I have probably the most of is Lockheed Martin. Definitely the most since it's up the most. But I don't get into politics. Knock? Oh, yeah. These were all really good 50% retracements, by the way, last year or the year before. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Back in June of this year, actually, even before October the 7th of last year, October the 2nd. Hold on. Yeah. So October the 6th. October the 6th, the day before it happened, the day before the Saturday it happened, Northrop Grumman hit 41.19, which was the 50% of the low in February 21 to the all-time high in 2022. And did the price know that was going to happen? I don't know, but it perfect hit of the 50%. And then you got another hit back here in June. So again, kind of circling back to what I was talking about gold earlier in the live stream about how important 50% levels are and how you can, almost chart, where is this thing going to stop at based on, forward looking to 50%. I mean, that's right there. So, yeah. Bayer acquired Monsanto years ago and had to deal with lawsuits because of that. I think there are some positive signs that the lawsuit will end in the near future. Very well, if you think that. But I trade on this. So I feel like if you dig into the news, you can come up with your own opinions. And a lot of people do try to trade on that. But show me a 50%, and I'll take it. All right, guys. Have a good weekend. Trade wisely. Stay safe. Have good OPSEC. So we'll see you next week. See you then.